Welcome to Buses, Benches, and Baseball, presented by DimTroduction.
Who? Never heard of him.
Who's this guy?
It's not real!
Now here is your host, Tim Dillard.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the world's #1 most unneeded minor league baseball podcast in the world. It's Buses, Benches, and Baseball. And I'm your host, Tim Dillard. Thanks for tuning in to episode 7 of this pointless podcast. However you're getting it, whether it's through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or watching it on YouTube. I appreciate it. Very cool to see the reviews and 5-star ratings popping up, so let's keep that going as much as possible. And hey, if there's something that you want to see or hear on the show, questions, guests, something you want to learn more about, please feel free to message me on Twitter or Instagram, maybe even on Facebook, or just send me an email to dimtillard@gmail.com so we can get the content that interests you the most. You know, I started this show to shine a light on the journey and the lifestyle of minor league baseball because it's a privilege to be in professional baseball in any shape or form. And there's so many stories and experiences out there that are not only fun to hear about, but also something to learn from or be encouraged by. And this episode will be no exception, as I'll be joined by journeyman turned pitching coach and team barber, Mark DiFelice. But before we get started, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Be sure to get all your useless Dim Tillard merchandise at dimtillard.com.
Shh, it's story time.
Listen up, this will only take a second.
The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Welcome to Story Time. Today's story begins the day my professional baseball journey began, mid-June 2003. I was a young buck, 19 years old, and had just signed with the Milwaukee Brewers out of junior college. And I was getting on a plane, a very small plane, at the Tupelo, Mississippi Regional Airport to fly all the way, 20 minutes, to Memphis, Tennessee, where I would then get on another plane and fly to Phoenix, Arizona. Not sure why that was the case, but back in those days, they would mail you your plane tickets. So this is kind of a different era of time. Anyway, my mom and dad, they drive me to the miniature airport to get on the airplane that more or less resembles the size of a model kit you'd see on a child's shelf. Hopefully more than crafting glue was holding the plane together, but my dad, who played in the big leagues before I was born, was a minor league coach for decades, a man full of wisdom and knowledge, standing there with his very scholaristic mustache. I don't think that's a word, but a gentleman who I'd known my entire life was seeing his son take his first step into the life of professional baseball. And so before I got on the plane, I remember my dad standing next to me. He calmly puts his hand on my shoulder. It was at this moment there was so many emotions going through my head. I was certain my dad was about to say something like, "I love you," or, "I'm proud of you," that kind of thing. But that's not what he said. My dad looks at me in the eyes and he says, "Be nice to the clubbies and stay out of the training room." And with that, I boarded the plane, the whole time thinking, what did he just say? Be nice to the clubbies and stay out of the training room. And I was replaying this line over and over in my head, even when the pilot came to ask me to move from the back to the middle because of, airplane weight distribution, which was both embarrassing and brought up questions of flight safety. But be nice to the clubbies and stay out of the training room. Over my career, as I unpacked what old Pops McGee was trying to say that day, I found that there were a lot of layers wrapped up in that. Number one, be nice to the clubbies, because it had been in his experience where he had witnessed teammates, for whatever reason, treating the clubhouse staff poorly. And that was unacceptable to him. Kindness, understanding that it takes a village to make the professional baseball world go round, right? There's players and coaches, yes, but there's also bat boys, clubhouse staff, ticket takers, concession stand workers, mascots, parking attendants, promotional staff. The list goes on. And what he's really saying was treat everyone you come in contact with respect they deserve. And that's just healthy life advice, right? Don't consider yourself better than anyone else. It's a great way to live. It's a powerful message. And number 2, stay out of the training room. A large part of baseball used to be availability. In fact, one of my best abilities at playing baseball was availability. That's the best ability there is. Being able to show up every day, ready to play. And that's your job, to be on the field, not to be a frequent visitor to the training room for every little thing that comes up. Maybe you got a hangnail, you can't play that day. But knowing the difference between being hurt and being injured. What can you play through? What can you not? Learning to take care of yourself is a huge part of the game at any level, whether it's little league all the way up through the big leagues. Keeping yourself healthy, able to play every single game all season long. Hard to accomplish that if you're always on the training table. So it was stay out of the training room, hammered home the idea of self-recovery and being smart off the field, listening to your body, knowing your limits, and keeping yourself on that field. Amazing how this small phrase made in front of a sketchy crop hopping airplane was packed with so much depth, wisdom, insight, and that it would put me on a trajectory to shape my attitude and perspective for my life from that moment forward. Or maybe my dad just wanted me to leave the trainers alone and make friends with the clubbies.
Now it's time for a Mound visit.
I am joined with former baseball player, pitcher, former teammate, Mark DiFelice. Mark, thanks for being on the show. It's weird to say Mark. I'm going to call you Deefer. Is that okay? I'll call you Deefer.
Fine. I've been called Deep for most of my playing career, so.
Yeah, that fits. Everybody calls me Dilly. Every time I hear something other than Dilly, I'm like, who is this person?
Oh, Timmy. It's good seeing you, brother.
It's good seeing you. Just a couple of text messages, all it took to get you on here.
Friends are in baseball are friends for life. So you text me and give me the opportunity to be on your show, I'm going to do it.
We go back a long way. 2007 Sounds, I think, was the first time that we were together in AAA. But your career goes back all the way to 1998. Am I allowed to say that? 1998?
How old I was when I played with you guys. I was about 6-7 years older than some of you guys.
Well, you don't look it. You still look younger than me, by the way. Talk about a little bit about growing up, playing baseball, and then suddenly you get drafted by the Rockies, and kind of that time in your life.
Baseball has always been special to me ever since I was a young kid. Growing up in a baseball family. My father played baseball in high school, played basketball as well. My brother played baseball. He went to Penn State. We were really good in high school. That carried over to college baseball. I chose Western Carolina to go. I guess it really didn't dawn on me until probably my junior or senior year in college that I could probably do this professionally. Had a really good junior year and didn't get drafted. So I was like, I got to hit the books a little bit more. But had a really good senior year and got drafted in the 15th round by the Colorado Rockies.
What was that like? Because we talk about baseball nowadays, and then we talk about it maybe in the middle of our careers, and then you talk about it when you came in. A lot's changed.
A lot has changed. I signed for $1,000, or basically a plane ticket. They sent me off to Portland, Oregon. They were doing their short season A-ball team there, and they had this mini camp that they had before, I guess, the season started in July. And you're thrust into this environment, and you don't know kind of what's going on. You're getting paid to play baseball, not very handsomely, but you're getting paid, and you start gauging yourself with all of these other players because your aspirations of making it to the big leagues are way up there. Hey, I just got drafted. The organization loved me enough to, sign me to a contract. And then you get to an environment where there are so many better guys than you. They throw harder. They have nastier stuff. And you're like, ooh, how long is this going to take? So that first year was kind of eye-opening for me. I kind of held my own. I was a starting pitcher. They gave me the opportunity to start. I was a quote unquote polished senior coming out of Western Carolina. So I got put in the rotation. I was piggybacking when I first got there. So I would start a game and then I would pitch the first 5 innings and some would come in and pitch the next four. And then vice versa. I would come in and relieve the last four. And towards the end of the season, I started starting games on my own. And I think I logged like 80 some odd innings that first year. And yeah, I was like, you know what? I can do this. It was a big confidence boost going into that second year and into spring training, my first spring training.
Yeah, it's weird. Right when you sign, you think, man, I must be really good because wherever you come out of, you're like, man, I must be doing something right. I got drafted. They some interest in me. I signed with the Brewers in 2003. I go to Arizona, and one of the first times I'm doing a chart in the radar gun, I'm watching Tom Wilhelmsen. Do you remember Tom Wilhelmsen? He was with the Mariners and got some big league time there, but came up with the Brewers. And this dude's throwing 95 with sink with a nasty slider and a changeup. And I remember thinking I should put this chart down and leave.
95 used to be something.
Yeah,
Now,
95 was unbelievable then.
how hard these kids throw now.
Yeah, a lot's changed. And you didn't throw that hard. Like when we were together, not knocking you, but 2007, you've already been in the minor leagues for a long time. You come over to the Brewers, we're in AAA together, and you're throwing a cutter, which not a lot of people threw a cutter back then. I can only think of a couple of pitchers that I was even teammates with or faced against that threw a good cutter, but yours is one of the best I'd ever seen.
There's a story behind that too. So, I'm a journeyman at this point. I had been in 3 other organizations before I had gotten to the Brewers, 5 or 4 if you include the short stint I had with the Chicago Cubs, signed and released out of spring training. But I had been going to play winter ball. 4 years, 3 out of the 4 years were down in Mexico. And in 2006, I went to Obregon, I'm sorry, that's the Yaquis, the Obregon Yaquis. And
Oh, yeah.
I met a pitching coach there named Adolfo Navarro. And he was the bullpen pitching coach at the time. He's looking at my arsenal, and then I'm throwing like, my hardest bullet's probably 92. I sit like 88 to 90-ish. I'll touch 92, like if the wind's blowing pretty good from behind me. And I had this slider that was about 80, 81-ish. It was what today would be quote unquote a sweeper. Okay. And I had no separation between my pitches. I had that fastball. I had a changeup at around 83, the slider at 81, and a curveball around 77, 78. So all of my secondary pitches were the same speed. So he was like, you need something in between those to get them off of the fastball. You can't just go fastball, then just slow stuff. So he taught me this cutter. And I'll tell you what, I picked it up in the bullpen that night and I used it in the next game. I punched out like 7 guys and broke 4 bats. And I was like, I'm sold. So this Mexican pitching coach who knew no English, we had an interpreter through the catcher, taught me the pitch that got me to the big leagues. It's crazy.
That's incredible. Yeah. I remember you were having such success in Nashville. And so one day, I don't know if you remember this, of course, you were probably trying to get ready for a game, but you needed someone to stand in. Like when you're warming up to go into a game, you're in the bullpen, you got your catcher there, pitching coach, you're getting ready. You kind of want a reference point, and you were looking for someone to step in there, and there was nobody around, or at least nobody around that would do it. So I was like, I'll do it. And I stepped in, and you're like, cutter, and you threw it, and my eyes had never seen a pitch like this, at least not from that angle, because looked like a 4-seam fastball the entire way. I mean, like, most stuff kind of gets in and out of the zone. You can kind of see it about halfway to the plate. You recognize what it's going to do. I felt like this sucker went straight up to the plate and then moved away from me to the point where the catcher was catching it off the dish. And I just was like, I get it. I totally get it now.
By that time, I knew a lot of people in baseball, friends of mine that played on other teams, and they would anticipate the cutter. And the feedback that I would get from them was exactly what you said. It looked like a 4-seam fastball until the very end. So lefties, the reason I really needed the pitch is because I threw well against right-handed, but I wasn't very good against lefties. That cutter that I could ride in on the lefties' hands was an equalizer for me. So now I started having hitters kind of move off the plate to kind of cheat to get to the cutter. And that's when I would kind of just throw that four seam fastball to the arm side of the plate and or just backdoor something, to kind of get them a little bit closer. Then I'd pound it back in. So it's a cat and mouse game, really.
And you're still doing it too, right? You're in the coaching sector. How long you been coaching?
11 years. So I know, right? I started out my coaching career with the Pittsburgh Pirates, which was a good organization to be in when I was first starting out. They do a very good job of coaching coaches. Not a lot of organizations do that. When you go to some organizations, it's like they think you have everything figured out as far as biomechanics, delivery. Now we have, analytics to go along with all that stuff. They were very good at the biomechanics factor of the delivery. Jim Benedict was my pitching coordinator, the quote unquote guru, with the likes of Garrett Cole, a couple other guys that came through there in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization that are having success in other organizations, Glass now. So the biomechanics portion of what I did was very, very good with Pittsburgh. Analytically, I learned more in the Marlins organization. So I jumped ship after my third year with the Pirates. I followed that pitching coordinator, Jim Benedict, over to Miami. He became a vice president or whatnot. So I jumped over there for 5 years. And I learned more about analytics being in that organization. They had a infiltration of the Yankees when Derek Jeter came down and him and Sherman bought the Yankees. And next thing you know, all of their analytics department came down and, you talk about spin rates and induced vertical break and horizontal and all this stuff. And it's just a wealth of knowledge. Now, we didn't have all that stuff when we played at all. I mean, we could tell if a fastball had some ride on it just from a guy had a good 88 to 90, 92 mile an hour fastball that he threw to the top of the zone that he was throwing by guys. So now they can put a value on that. So, the game has changed a lot and you adapt or die. So I've gotten a lot smarter in my time. I didn't know any of this stuff before I became a pitching coach. I mean, I knew biomechanics, but I didn't know any of the analytic part of what it is that makes a good fastball or how to create run. Or now that we have the cutter, what a -2, -3 horizontal break, all that stuff. So now we have value.
That's crazy. You're talking about the Pirates in particular. You said an organization that coaches coaches. I don't even know if I've heard that expression before, but that's really good because, when you get done playing, you feel like you have a lot of knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can coach. I feel like I can coach my kid, even though they don't listen. I try, like, hey man, what are you doing? But there's a certain you have to have a feel for it, and you have to be kind of taught. There's not a lot of guys that go straight from playing to suddenly they're in the big leagues, and they can be the best players in the world, and they're still doesn't make them good coaches.
That is completely a true statement. I think what we bring to the table with our playing background is communication skills. I mean, you can have a wealth of knowledge, but you can't communicate to said player what they need to do. And I think having an extensive playing background, playing 14 odd years or whatnot, I've been to Latin America. I've been to Venezuela. I've been to Mexico. I know where those kids come from. And then I've been to just about every part of this country, Texas, California, you name it. So everybody's a little bit different. So just getting that person to kind of really hone in on their why, quote unquote, why they're playing the game, what it is that you want to do moving forward, because accountability is huge. Kids aren't the same today as we were back then. You got to push guys most of the time. Back then we were I'm a Generation Xer. So it was like do or die type for me. So now it's like these guys get drafted, they get all this money and quote unquote pampered in this game with the food they're getting now in the minor league clubhouses. We didn't get any of that stuff. It's like, what's your incentive for moving to the next level? You're getting money. If you're a 6-year free agent now, these guys are making $15,000, $20,000 a month. You would only get that if you played in the big leagues. Now they're getting in the minor leagues with no service time. It's absolutely amazing.
That's insane. That was a whole year,
I got done my career. I'm just like, so the math ain't mathing.
Yeah, and you always wonder too, like, what am I going to do after I bet my last probably 7 years playing, we're like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do next? I can't do this forever. Even though your body may be like, your mind be like, yeah, I'm going to keep playing forever. Eventually, no one's going to give you a jersey, or there's injuries, or you just nobody's going to take a chance at all, and you can't get your foot in the door. But that's a real fear when you're in the minor leagues of what's going to come next.
Absolutely. I think I always knew I wanted to be involved with professional baseball after my playing career. It was just getting my foot back in the door. It's just as cutthroat as, being a player, just the opportunities being a coach just aren't there. So you go to your network, you know what I mean? The people that you know the most. And how I ended up over in Pittsburgh was it was a special assistant to the general manager of the Cincinnati Reds, Sean Pender, who grew up in my hometown, who
Wow.
knew, and he was a scout for the Baltimore Orioles, a number of other organizations, but like that was my kind of in. Of course, I reached out to, organizations I had played for. I reached out to the Brewers. They didn't have anything at the time. And then I reached out to the Colorado Rockies, but just, I didn't hit my first year. And then my second year out, in 2014, I hit with the Pirates, and I got to work, and it was just amazing what I didn't know, and how to really kind of navigate through this. I'm on the other side of the fence now. I'm sitting in those meetings. It's something like out of Moneyball when they're all sitting around the table. Kid's got a good body, good swing. And he's like, well, if he's got a good swing and he can hit, why doesn't he hit? You know what I mean? So those meetings definitely take place. Definitely take place. So it comes down to spring training shouldn't be oh, he impressed in spring training, he made the team. It should be the body of work you did the year before, and then how well you come into to camp that year. It should be about maybe 80-20, or maybe even 90-10 the year before. But, you could sway coaches. All of a sudden a guy starts throwing a little bit harder and his stuff looks a little bit nastier. Guys coming out like the level I'm at in high A, these guys just get done college and they play probably a short amount of time that next year because they've moved the draft back now to the All-Star break. Before it was in June, now it's like the end of July.
Yeah.
Basically, Intel only have like about a month and a half of pro ball before they go into. So a lot of the college guys, instead of starting at, say, high A, will start in low A because they've gotten rid of short season A ball. That's gone now. They wanted to pay the players a little bit more money, so they're just going to lessen the personnel that they have to pay. But now they have this thing called the dead period, where from middle of November to January 1st, no contact with any of the players. I have a call list that I keep up with players, about 20 kids, and no contact with them until January 1st.
Wow.
So
I think back to my dad. My dad was a coach after he played, and he said, kind of to your point, like how the behind the scenes works. It's very strange. You're in these meetings, and yes, you can sway somebody. And he said it was eye opening to him that he never wanted to be in the same organization as me when I was coming up because he didn't want to be in that room and someone be like, well, this Dillard kid, he's trash, Like, oh, yeah, thanks. Speak up, Dad. Let's go. But that's the way it was. And as a player, you never get to see that. That shroud is not there. You think you have every chance in the world, and that's kind of what it is in spring training. Like that you want to walk in and think that you have a chance to do this. And another thing you said too about how hard it is and how cutthroat it is as far as coaching. The winter meetings, the last time they were in Nashville, I talked to Stephen Vogt right when he got the job for the Guardians. And he said, I think this is what he said. He had 22 meetings with the organization before he got the managerial job there. 22 meetings that lasted like hours. I was like, I'd give up. I'm like, this is too long. I'm out.
first year when I was, doing my rounds as far as trying to become a pitching coach, Colorado flew me out to Denver, and I had a 5-hour meeting with Jeff Brightish, who was the farm director at the time, and two other analysts slash assistants. And I thought it went great. I didn't end up getting the job, but they're going to fly me out to Colorado. I'm walking through. I see a bunch of trainers that are now at the big league level. In the building. I saw Dan O'Dowd and like, hey, you're interviewing for the job. Everybody's like, yeah, hire this guy. He's great. Da 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 da. Didn't end up getting the job, but that's all right.
That's crazy.
Don't take no for an answer. You know what I mean? One door closes, something else will open.
Yeah, I remember pitching coach I had one time. He called a meeting. We weren't doing that great. I don't know if you were there or not, but we calls us all together, and he just was like, "Do something, like just do something." And we all kind of made fun of him throughout the game. That game we're in the bullpen, we're just like, "Do something," we're making fun. But that kind of stuck with me. If you're just waiting around for something to kind of happen to you, that's not going to work in baseball. You have to do something. You got to get out there, put yourself out there. I kind of applied that to my career, and I think I lasted a little longer just because I was willing to try stuff out. I was willing to go places that were a little bit maybe out of my comfort zone at the time, that kept me a jersey and kept me playing in this game. But I think that definitely applies to baseball. You just have to do something and get out there and see what can happen.
What's your separator? You know what I mean? Like I kept hearing that throughout my career. It's like, you're a stock righty. Okay. What separates you from the next guy? And I'm like, I guess not much. You know what I mean? The only thing that I could think of was this, your heart and your determination, perseverance. I mean, 10 years in the minor leagues before I got my opportunity to pitch in the big leagues. You know what I mean? It's like, I was the guy that never quit. But when I went down to Mexico and I got that cutter, that was my separator. That opened up a new avenue for me to try to, help me get to the big leagues. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I kind of ran with it. And now we talk to players about using their best secondary pitch more. I threw that cutter 80% of the time, almost every pitch. So now I'm explaining to these kids that I'm coaching, it's like, you have a really good curveball. Back in the day, it was all pitch off the fastball. You got a good 94. You had a 96 mile an hour fastball. When you started to drop down, I was just like, man, I would have loved to have had your 96. But that was your separator. That was you trying to maneuver your way to separate you from the quote unquote stock righty kind of label. And, kudos to you for really, having that career, man. I mean, you 17, 18 years did you play?
Yeah, like a lot. Everybody was ready for me to retire. It took a global pandemic to get rid of me.
Oh man.
But let's talk about your time with the Brewers, our time with the Brewers together, getting called up. I remember we were roommates probably at some point on a road trip, because I remember you told me about Netflix, like the Netflix app. You were the first person that told me that. And so I was like, this is sweet. You don't have to go like find something on TV after a game. You can just watch something on Netflix. So I don't know why I remember that. And I remember us rooming together at that house that we rented, I think in 2008. It was like Zach Jackson, R.A. Dickey, Steve Bray. There were some wives there. Just talk about your time with the Brewers there and getting called up as well.
Was Parr in that room or that?
Manny P. Yeah.
I just remember playing, Rock Band constantly with you guys. I would always take the mic. I wasn't a drummer or a keyboard or a guitar guy, but I was always sing. You know me, I like my karaoke. To tell you the truth, I almost missed the call from Gord Ash to get called up to the big leagues. I don't know if you remember. We went to Vegas. We took a trip to Vegas. I pitched the game before. So I went to Las Vegas not having to pitch, which I had a great time in Vegas. And when we got home, we had an off day. Okay. So it's like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not waking up for anything. And I look at my phone and I have about 5 or 6 missed phone calls, 2 from Gord Ash, 2 from Frank Kremblis, and then 2 from Stan Kiles. And I immediately called Gord Ash back because, that's the guy you should call back. And he goes, "Have you talked to your manager?" And I said, "No." He's like, "Call Frank back. And then when he talks to you, give me a call." So I talked to Frank. He's like, "You still sleeping?" I was like, "It's an off day. Of course I'm still sleeping. I'll sleep till noon if I have to." So they brought me in, and that's when, they wanted to mess with me a little bit and, tell me that stuff had happened in Las Vegas that shouldn't have happened. But, No, they ended up, telling me I got called up to the big leagues and to give Gordash a call back and then finalize all the flights and stuff like that. But it was kind of funny. I mean, you were right behind me, but Zach Jackson got called up the exact same. I mean, he was on like the next flight or something like that, like right behind me. So like all three of us were up there just about at the same time. And what a time that was, man. That's unbelievable. It was all those 10 to 11 years of just in the minor leagues, just trying to, find your niche and try to find your organization, bouncing around just to have that moment it was all worth it.
That's really incredible. Yeah, I didn't know you almost missed the call. Shame on you. But it was a different time back then when it comes to like phones. Your phones weren't as smart as they are now.
And we used to sit there in the bullpen. I don't know if you remember, like everybody would sit behind, right? They were, and then you got, the bathroom right there, and then everybody would sit back. But me and you, there was two benches right on the wall, and me and you were just right next to each other the whole time, just taking it all in.
Yeah, in Milwaukee, I don't think we were allowed to sit on that back bench.
We weren't. Probably we knew our place, I guess.
Oh, one more question, and then we're going to play a game. Talk about, so a lot of people don't know this, but you were the team barber probably on every team you were on. Where did the team barber come from?
So, my grandmother was a hairstylist, and my aunt owned a hair salon. So I don't know if it's like in my blood or whatnot, but I was in college with a bunch of buddies, and you're broke. You have no money. We went to Walmart. We bought a set of clippers, and we just started buzzing our heads. Just every time it got to the point where we really couldn't stand it, we'd buzz our heads. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to do something here. So I started cutting, and just try to work on the fade and all this other stuff. And I started cutting pretty good heads of hair where everybody was pretty impressed. That's where it originated in college. And I started cutting my own hair. And then every team I went to, I would break out the clippers. I'm like, who needs a haircut? So it would start with just your stock, probably a 6 on top, faded to like a 2. You know what I mean? And then that was about 2-3 years of that. And then I started kind of, using scissors a little bit here and there. And I remember you used to come into the bathroom. You used to have your own clippers. You used to buzz your head back in the day. So I'm like, Timmy, I could cut that up a little bit. But that's how it started. And to tell you the truth, I kind of used it because I wasn't always the new guy, but I'd start bouncing around from organization to organization, and I'd use that as a way of getting to know guys. Hey, they knew I kind of cut hair. I'd put them in the chair and, hey, how you doing? Like, well, what's going on? And relationships grow that way. And no, it's something I continue to do for my players as well. I'll cut some of the players that I coach's hair, if they really need it. A lot of the Latin players that they don't have the words to go out and do it themselves sometimes. So I'm like, I got you, buddy. I got you. Just have a seat, and I'll cut you up.
That's awesome. And a lot of times you don't have the time and the schedule to go find a good haircut. You might be on the road, or instead of working, trying to go get a haircut, I'm just going to sleep at that time. Like, your schedule's so different. So to have somebody in the clubhouse, I guess that's why we need to explain why everybody gets their hair cut in the clubhouse. But I've had tons. I mean, Hiram Burgos with the Brewers, he's a coach now. He used to cut hair. Before him, Maldonado, I think, would cut some hair. Before him, Grant Balfour. Grant Balfour would cut the Brismet. He cut my hair in Memphis one time. Best haircut I ever had. I mean, yours was second, but his was unbelievable. He spent like an hour on it. But those were the days, man. You just had to, make do with what you got, and that was part of it, getting a haircut. I always appreciated that. I probably should have tipped you.
Things I miss the most, and I see it now today with, you talk about social media and phones. Like, we didn't have that stuff back then, so when you got to the clubhouse, you were engrossed with family. You know what I mean? Like, you play on a team, these guys become your family. We played the games, we played the cards, we did this, we'd listen to music, everybody be jockeying to put their own music on the radio. But today's game, man, I walk into the clubhouse and everybody's got their heads down, just on their phones, doing whatever. I would like to think some of them are watching their swing, maybe on their phone, maybe, but it's a different environment. So myself, along with some other players, Delwyn Young is my hitting coach now. with the Wilmington Blue Rocks. That's where my team is, which inconsequently it's 35 minutes from where I live. So that's so Sam Nairn, we know Sammy,
Yeah.
pitching coordinator with the Washington Nationals. He called me about 4 years ago, wanting to know my status as far. He knew I was a pitching coach in different organizations, and at that time, I had just left Miami, and I was like, where are you thinking? He goes, we got two spots. We got Double A Harrisburg or High A Wilmington, Delaware. I go, Sammy, Wilmington's 35 minutes from home for me. So for the past 4 years, I've been commuting back and forth. I have a job in baseball, living in my house. So it's like you playing baseball in Nashville and going home every night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You don't set it up that way. You don't always get a chance. Most of the time, these guys are not from anywhere close to where they're playing. But when you have that time to do it, dude, it is sweet.
oh,
You talk about hanging out in the clubhouse and stuff. I remember, when you didn't have cell phones and the social media stuff, spring training is where you got to hear everyone's story about what they did the entire off season. Like that was all spring training is telling stories. You come in and you're just all your downtime, you're just telling stories about, hey man, what'd you do this off season? Everybody talk about their crazy off season job that they had. And then, the season starts and then it was like games. You're playing games. You're playing card games. We used to play tons of card games, even board games in the clubhouse.
we get the cribbage board out, and then what was it? Spades, hearts, pluck. Pluck was a game.
Yeah, pluctologists everywhere. All right, so we're going to play a game called the Hat Game. I got a old Nashville Sounds stretchy hat. These were the worst hats, the BP hats. And I'm just going to pull a topic out of it, and you get to tell a story about it. This is actually fitting. I put these in here just for you. Most famous person you've given a haircut to.
It's funny. I gave a haircut to Rock live on television.
Bill Schroeder, baby. Yeah, I remember that.
Schroeder. I cut Prince Fielder's hair. I gave him a Will Smith flat top one time. Jeff Suppan used to hit me up for some haircuts here and there. Just all ball players, nobody outside of the baseball family. But my time in the big leagues, I think I made my rounds just about everywhere. I think I cut Braun's hair one time. So yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I thought you were going to say me.
who are you?
All right, probably cutting hair, but what's a crazy off-season job that you had?
I was a landscaper for a number of years. That was early on, and then I was a courier for a company called the Camera Shop Incorporated. So I would drive all their merchandise around to all the satellite companies and stuff and drop off stuff. Yeah, when I was like in my early 20s.
Yeah, that is weird.
This was before GPS. So I'm sitting there driving a car, right? And I got the Atlas out. I have no idea where I'm going. So I'm trying not to crash. I got the Atlas out. I make a right here. Yeah. So I needed some GPS back then. It would have been a lot easier.
For everybody listening at home, an atlas is a map. It's a three ring. It's got a binder on it. So I used to have one. I used to have a 2006 Atlas that I kept in my car to get to spring training every year when I drive out. All right, let's do another one. Do you have any superstitions when you played?
You always want to sit in the same spot. You know what I mean? I know we went to the bullpen in Nashville. We had those chairs and we'd sit on top of the mound. And I think everybody had their little spot that they would kind of pick out. As a starting pitcher, though, I started this. I don't know where it originated, but you drink water during the games, and after the first inning, my first cup of water I would turn up and put down. Okay, and the second inning, I would try to make a pyramid and try to get that thing on top. I'd pitch into was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then if you pitch a complete game, you got the snow cone on top. But I would start, doing a pyramid with my plastic cups and see how high I could get it. That was kind of a ritual of mine.
That's awesome. Yeah, I did the same thing when I was a starter. I had my cups of water and I would I would stack them. I wouldn't do it as cool as a pyramid. I wasn't that creative at the time, but when you're in the game, you don't really pay attention to like the innings and stuff like that. So when I came into the dugout, instead of looking at the scoreboard or asking somebody, I would just see how many cups I had to see what inning it was. I know that seems really strange, but when you're in the moment, like going through it, it makes perfect sense for some reason.
Until somebody strikes out and comes in and just knocks all your stuff all over.
Or the bat boy throws your cups away. Who's the dead man that threw my cups away? All right, let's see what we got here. What advice would you give to the next group of players? Like, I know you're coaching, but what sort of advice that you feel like maybe transcends some of the analytic stuff and goes to what you're talking about, more of the heart and soul of the game?
So I have a little pitching academy that I run in the off season. It's not to plug myself, but Mark DiFelice Pitching Lab. But parents always tell me, as far as like trying to build velocity and this and that, the work you put in, okay, translates to the product you put out. Okay, so if you're willing to put the work in, okay, and I mean, be dedicated to this sport, whatever sport you choose, you know what I mean? But you gotta be able to put the work in. You can't just show up and throw your 30 to 40 minutes, do some arm drills, and think you're going to be the next coming. It happens off the field too. You got to get in the gym, get in the weight room, get physically stronger, eat the right foods, gain weight. I said the pounds you put on translates into velocity, moving down the mound to create that foot strike to help generate arm speed. So, be realistic, about your future, but also put the work in. Put the work in, because I'm doing my nephew right now. I'm doing lessons with him, and my brother's like, talk to him about getting in the gym. He just does not want to get in the gym, and he's a little on the skinnier side. He's a junior in high school, and I'm like, I'm constantly talking to him. So if they want it, you gotta pay the ultimate price for it. You know what I mean? You gotta sweat for it.
Yeah, and you're really talking about time. Like, you put time into what you want to have happen and how to get better. And nowadays it's harder than ever because everyone's distracted by that cell phone or tablet or TV. Everyone's distracted by that, and the time ends up being eaten up by one of those suckers. Let me see what I got in the hat here. Ooh, favorite clubby. Is there a clubby that stands out? It could be a home clubby, could be an away clubby.
Shogger, he was great. I'm trying to think. I've had some bad ones.
Don't name bad clubbies.
Yeah, I tell you what, we are actually in still good communication. Is Marcus Commander? He was the clubby in Huntsville in 2007, and I'll tell you what, the guy worked his butt off.
Wow.
And he knew what it was to be a clubby. He would go out and get deals with restaurants to help cater, what it was he fed us, after the games and stuff like that. He always had a good spread post BP and then after the game. So he probably stands out the most. I saw him again a couple of years back. He became the West Virginia Power visiting clubhouse attendant. So he's been in the circles. He's been everywhere. But yeah, Marcus Commander is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there, and you get to know these guys. You travel a lot. I was in the PCL a long time. You were in the PCL a long time. I think of Kenny Buffton in Round Rock. I still keep up with Kenny. We talk probably once a week.
Yeah, that's great.
That guy has the best mullet in baseball. All right, here we go. Here's no. Okay, you have 100 professional at-bats in your career. In 2001, you hit a triple. In 2003, you were hit by a pitch. I bet you remember those.
I absolutely do. I hit a triple in Colorado Springs.
That was shocker.
I think it was right center gap. That you've been to that. You've played many years there, so it's a huge field. I mean, it has to be because it's so high in elevation. So I remember going the opposite way to right center, which was the perfect spot to hit it there. You could hit a triple down the line. I wasn't that fast, but I hit it in the right center gap and got the third. And then I got hit by a pitch from Casey Daigle. I squared to bunt, and he ran a 97-mile-an-hour fastball in and drilled me right in my elbow.
Your throwing elbow?
My throwing elbow hit muscle. I was in, I think, the 6th or 7th inning. I was starting that day, and I was pitching great.
Those cones were stacked up nice.
Yeah, the cones stacked up nicely, and it took me out of the game. He apologized to me the next day, and I was like, "You don't have to. It's part of the game." I'm getting my nose in there. You know what I mean? I don't think it was that far inside. It's just I was probably out over the plate where I shouldn't be, and a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, you got to get out of the way of. And I think I was late. Yeah.
And that's the guy, Casey Daigle, right? He's the one that married
Jenny Finch,
softball player.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
we played against each other in Round Rock, and he'd be in the bullpen, and Jenny Finch was there after they had their first kid, just walk around the concourse of the stadium, and the kids in the stroller, just putting the kid to sleep. Oh, this is fun. You ever wake up still thinking you're a player?
I used to. I'm 2 years away from 50, so not anymore. And I'll tell you what, my knee reminds me every day. 2007, I remember I had microfracture surgery on my knee. I showed up to spring training on crutches.
Yeah.
So that was 14 years ago, 15 years ago. So I'm bone on my right knee now. So I get those Euflexa injections, the fatty tissue.
Yeah.
Kind of keep at bay the fact that I need a knee replacement. So probably 10 years, I'll probably need it. But I can tell you when it's going to rain for sure.
You sound like my left hip talking. All right. Let me see. Most famous person you have struck out?
It was probably my first strikeout, Manny Ramirez.
Oh, prime Manny, too.
The most memorable for me, though, I have to say, was probably in Houston. I struck out Darren Erdstadt to end the game in the 10th inning. So we had depleted our bullpen, and I was probably the last arm we had. And I ended up pitching, I believe it was the bottom of the 10th, and then we took the lead in the top of the 11th, and I closed the game out in the bottom of the 11th, got the win. But Darren Erdstadt struck out with a guy, I think Hunter Pence was on second base. He gets a knock, ties the game up, punched him out on a nice breaking ball, and that was probably my most, it still sticks with me. Vulture to win.
Yeah, Vulture. Yeah, you earned that in
I did
Houston as well. Yeah, he was thinking cutter. Got the old hammer of Thor. All right. What do you miss the most?
I think the camaraderie, being in the clubhouse with the fellas, competing, with you guys, going to war with you guys, and then going celebrating afterwards when we won the game. But just the camaraderie of just being in that clubhouse and sharing life with you guys, man. It's great. We me coaching now, we have our coaching staff. Some of these guys I've been with the last 3-4 years, and I can feel it with them. I have a 66-year-old fourth coach with me, Mark Harris, who's been in this game 42 years. And, just a wealth of knowledge and being around. He's a Chicago Bears fan. I won't hold that against him, but just being around him every day during the summertime is a treat. And this man, he's 66, but he works like he's a 20-year-old. I mean, just everything for the players. You want to go take ground balls? Let's do it. You want to go hit? Let's go to the cage. I'll throw you some BP. And that's basically how we live our lives now. It's for the players. But I miss the camaraderie of competing with you guys. I really do.
Yeah, you're it's a servitude thing,
Yeah.
and it doesn't always have to start at coaching. I felt like, our time together, you were a very steady presence, cool and calm, just like you hear right now on the stupid show. You just bring that. You bring that perspective, and being teammates with you and me, just dipping my toe into AAA, and here's a guy that's been around. You've had tons of teammates. You've played all over the place. That's the best part about it, is just picking someone's brain, talking about baseball. And I don't feel like people maybe do that as much as they should, because I think it makes good players better. It makes great players incredible. Nobody gets away from this game thinking it's all about them. You're going to pick stuff up along the way. It could come from a teammate. It could come from a coach, but there's got to be that kind of player and that kind of coach willing to do that.
The best perspective that I can ever give anybody, and I think I shared that during my playing career as well, now as a coach, was pitch every game or play every game like it's your last one. because you just do not know when it's going to end. And I ended up in independent baseball after the 2005 season. And I didn't know if I was going to get back in. And I was playing to try to get back in, but I was playing for the love of the game as well. So when I got my opportunity, with the Brewers, I was going to try to make the best of it. And every day I stepped on the field, I played it like it was going to be my last day. So I try to share that perspective with guys. Don't take anything for granted.
Absolutely. Yeah, because when you get into the game, you think everything's on the up and up, and then suddenly it doesn't work out. And like you said, you're in independent ball, and you think, what am I doing here? And you are playing for love of the game, because it sure ain't money. You ain't making money in the independent ball.
No.
You're barely making any in affiliated baseball. But when you get back in, dude, everything just tastes sweeter. I went through the exact same thing once I got back in affiliated ball. The Brewers took a chance on me. Baseball had never been sweeter for me, because when you feel like it's about to be taken away or could be taken away, that urgency does one or two things. It can either scare you or it's going to scare you into enjoying it. And I felt like that was, I feel like I hit my stride after pretty much everybody had given up on me.
Like they say, you're playing with house money.
I did that for a decade. Well, Deefer, man, thank you for being on the show. Sorry I took so much of your time, but man, we haven't spoken in years, and I felt like we just had to kind of dig in here. So I just appreciate it, man. I love you, brother.
I love you too, man. I'm so glad you texted me. I'm so glad I did this, and you're awesome.
This is great.
Now comes the best part of the show, the ending. Yes, that's all for this week's episode of the world's #1 most unneeded minor league baseball podcast in the world, Buses, Benches, and Baseball. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Remember to subscribe, review, comment. If you're listening, remember that you can watch on YouTube. And if you're watching, remember you can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. And of course, be sure to follow on social media at DimTillard Show on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for your chance to win a random giveaway prize that is so amazing, it'll knock your Crocs off. Oh, and you can also shop DimTillard merchandise. Not sure why you would, but you can at DimTillard.com under the link Buy My Crap. See you next time on Buses, Benches, and Baseball.
Thank you for tuning in to Buses, Benches, and Baseball, presented by DimTillard.